Welcome back to the Reuters Finance Summit. I'm Fred Katayama, and we're coming to you from our Times Square studios in New York City. Joining me now is a man you've heard about for years, John Whitehead. He was formerly the longtime chairman of Goldman Sachs, as well as formerly Deputy U.S. Secretary of State under Ronald Reagan, and formerly chairman of the Lower Manhattan Development Corporation. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
John, I want to start with the economy. You say it's a lot worse than the American public makes it out to be, or that Congressmen in Washington make it out to be. We've got a huge mortgage mess, but in addition, you're worried about the credit card crisis. Explain.
Yes, I think the mortgage crisis is going to gradually unwind and become better, and in a couple of years it will be behind us. But I think right on the scene is a new crisis that may be even worse than the mortgage crisis, and that is what I'm calling the credit card crisis. I believe the two terror horrors are very similar. That in the mortgage crisis, people were being duped by mortgage lenders that were offering terms that were too good to refuse, and that the people taking out the mortgages couldn't afford. And when housing prices went down, it became evident that there were a lot of failures, and it all evolved. I believe that people now have too much debt on credit cards, and the issuers of credit cards are providing terms that are ridiculously careless. We get credit cards in the mail that we can automatically, by signing a piece of paper, accept, and then we have another $25,000 to spend. And the people that are issuing the credit cards don't ask any questions. How many other credit cards do you have? How much debt do you have on other credit cards? They don't ask those questions at all. And so if you're shrewd, you just, when you're filled up on your other credit cards, you just take the next new one that comes in the mail, and you don't even have to ask for it. They mail it to you anyhow. And so that's what's happening, and it's all making credit card debt much too heavy and beyond what people can afford.
That's scary, that scenario you're describing, because we've already talked about banks with the mortgage mess. Now you say there's more in store for the banks because of the credit card exposure.
Yes.
And what does this do to the scenario of debt? The U.S. government has gone in to try to bail out the banks. There's even talk about possibly helping General Motors and the auto industry. During the presidential campaign, the politicians made a lot of promises to spend on programs. What about our federal deficit?
It's too high, and we're not paying any attention to it, and it's getting higher and higher. We have all these unmet needs that everybody wants to see the federal government take care of for us. We have the failed Social Security program that will run out of money very shortly. We have a health care system that all the solutions involve more government expenditures. We have an infrastructure in the country that our roads and tunnels and highways are rusting away because they were all built 50 years or more ago, and nothing much has been done to keep them up. We have our desire to become independent of oil, independent of foreign oil at least, and very costly programs to build windmills and to make oil out of other ways, and all kinds of programs to create new energy. We have environmental problems and I could go on with the programs that the public wants and demands.
And one last question. John, you served under Reagan, who was a sunny optimist. The scenario you're describing, extremely pessimistic. Credit card debt, mortgage mess, and the U.S. federal deficit. How does this scenario compare to, say, the Great Depression?
I think it's really worse. The potential, if we don't do something about it immediately, the potential can be a worse depression than the one in 1930s. I'm so old now that I can well remember what the depression was like. My father lost his job for 2 years and was unemployed for 2 years during the depression, and that was when I was a teenager, and I remember it quite well. I had a lot of codfish cakes for dinner during that period, and actually grew to love codfish cakes. But it was a time of real danger for my family.
Wow. Well, I guess a lot of Americans will hope you're wrong, but I guess we'll take that as words of warning.
I hope I'm wrong, too.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for joining us, John.
Thank you.
This is John Whitehead, formerly chairman of the Lower Manhattan Development Corp. And formerly chairman of Goldman Sachs. I'll be back with more of my guests from the Reuters Finance Summit in New York. I'm Fred Katayama.